welcome to UX Design and Wine, where I sit down with UX and product designers at some of the world's largest software companies or blossoming startups over a glass of wine, and we hear their advice, insights, and their experiences being product professionals. I'm so excited to have the talented designer Ruben Cespedes on the show today to share a glass of wine. He is a principal product designer at Dell, which is huge, and he's also an ambassador for Adobe, and he creates really awesome educational content with Adobe for the design community. So Ruben originally transitioned from graphic design to UX design, so I'm going to ask him all about that and what his advice is for graphic designers who may be considering a similar jump. Also going to talk to him about the difference between working in a design agency setting versus a corporate design team, because he has experience in both, so that will be cool. And then also I'm going to ask his take on Adobe acquiring Figma as an Adobe ambassador and what he thinks that will, the effect that it will have in the future of Adobe XD as a product and the design community as a whole. So let's go. Well, hey Ruben, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and share a glass of a little something. Cheers.
Cheers.
So to kick things off, I'd love to have you just share a little bit about what you do as a principal product designer.
Yeah, definitely. As a principal product designer, I usually, create innovative and user-friendly experiences and for digital products. I work closely with cross-functional teams, like including engineering, research, marketing teams, to define and strategize the vision of the product. As of right now, we also I had to collaborate a lot with design team to kind of conceptualize, sketch, wireframe, prototype new features and designs for a specific product. In additionally to that, I do help a lot of user research for testing and validate some design ideas and decisions, and also ensure that the products that we're building are meeting the needs of the users and also the stakeholders. In my role as a principal product designer, I also participate a lot with on design reviews. I provide feedback and guidance to other designers as well, and I present a lot of my design to bigger and broader audience and stakeholders, PMs, POs. There's a lot of people involved in when creating products. I get to wear, as a principal product designer, I get to wear a lot of hats. Not this type of hat, but I get to wear a lot of hats, because as a product designer, you have to look out for the business goal and objectives, and also create user experiences, but also create UI designs as well.
Very cool. Yeah, it sounds like you do it all. Sounds like you have a hand in each part of the process, of the UX process. Would you say that's correct?
Mm-hmm.
Very nice.
That is correct. And it's not just, some people think oh, you just create wireframes and prototypes and you send them off and that's it, period. No, you have to be involved in the whole process, from conceptualization to, when it's already done, and then you have to evaluate if it's making any progress, if it's changing lives, whatever it is that you're creating, and then you kind of grab that data and then use that data to make it even better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that some people I talk about in the design field or UX or product field. Sometimes when they're newer to the industry and they start the job, they're a little surprised that it's not 90% of their time is just purely designing, and they're like, oh, I thought I'd be designing more. And of course you do a lot of designing, but there's so many other parts of the process and other things that are involved, especially if you're really looking at it through a holistic lens of, making sure that through execution, it really is providing a good user experience. So that's interesting to hear.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
And I know you were originally a graphic designer, and you were working at design agencies in New York for some huge companies before you transitioned to UX in about 2007. Can you talk a little bit about that transition from graphic designer to UX designer and product designer?
Yeah, definitely. As I started my career back in 2003, 4. And I started as a graphic designer. I went to college for The major was called digital media arts, which translated is graphic design. So I started like working with different agencies in New York City, kind of like learning a lot actually, because New York City, right? Like advertising and all that fun stuff. I was doing Flash animations. Back then we had Flash Micromedia. So I was kind of like as a designer experimenting with different venues, like doing graphic design, editorial design, print design, a little bit of web. So I was doing all of this stuff until, like I hit a point where I was like, I don't know, like I don't think I'm gonna be doing this for the rest of my life, just doing like so many different things. I wanted to focus on one thing only. And that's when I kind of like make the switch to digital products, like web, and also we were kind of like in the start of mobile back then, but I think it was still 2009, 10-ish when we made the whole switch to mobile. And 2007, it was a pivotal moment for me because I taught myself how to code. I saw there was a big disconnection between designers and developers because we were, as designers, and I was there, we used to make these amazing designs without even thinking if it was feasible to do. We were just like, making flashy, websites, and we were giving them to developers and engineers, and they were like, how am I going to do this? Because back then we didn't have the technology we have today. We didn't have the CSS properties we have today. Back then we had tables, right? And it was very difficult to work with tables and also with the designs we were providing. And I was like frustrated because I was like, what is going on? Like, why they cannot do it? And that gap, I wanted to close that gap. And in order for me to do it, and this is how I did it, I taught myself how to code HTML, CSS, JavaScript, a little bit of PHP just to understand it. And as soon as I did that, I kind of like, everything clicked. I was making designs that they were feasible to do because I was thinking as an engineer first. I was like, okay, if I put this here, they can use an absolute position. They're going to do that. But then I was thinking as a user UX designer, like thinking about the experience. And then at the end, I was applying the UI. So I was switching from having the UI first to having the UI last, which opened so many doors for me. And that's how kind of I made the change, into UX. Started reading about UX and the importance of UX within companies, within products. Of course, people think like UX is a thing that it's now or just like was born like in 2020 or 2018. And I'm like, no, that's totally wrong. UX has been with us for years, like for more than 100 years, because people were building products back then. And they were thinking about the users and the human interaction and all of that when they created the phone for the first time. That was a UX designer who created that. You know what I mean? Along with
it's a different name.
Stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's how I kind of like changed my thinking about design and then introduced the UX in it. And then because of that, I started like applying, UX principles to all my projects. And people were, some of the companies were like, what is this guy doing? Because I was forcing that UX process into some of these projects, and they were like, what is he doing? And I'm like, oh, you'll see. I'll create a process where it's going to be great for the company, also for the users that are going to be using the website. And that's how I kind of like started my journey as a UX designer. I forced myself into that situation, and I love it.
Very cool. I'm sure that will resonate with some people watching that are maybe in a smaller company that's very new to UX, or maybe the leaders and the management in the business don't truly understand it, and maybe have, therefore aren't ready to invest a bunch of time or resource or money into really allowing the designer to do the UX process. So it's interesting that you didn't let that phase you, and you just kind of persevered, and you had such belief in the results and the outcome that you were able to just keep doing it and knowing that the results would speak for themselves. So I think that's really impressive.
I definitely had some pushback from a company in specific, because I was like, hey, I wanted to try this out. I wanted to, get to know the users and stuff like that. And people were like, why do you need to know the users? And I'm like, oh, I have my reasonings. And they were like hesitant to do it because they were like, especially on agencies that it's a very fast pace, and it's like we need to have allocate for budgets, and we allocate for time and all that stuff. And I'm like, just I'll make the time. I work on the weekends if I have to, but I want to try this out on this specific project. And I did it, and the outcome of it was like triple what they were thinking about. And because of that, they allow me to, start implementing processes. People think like the UX process is linear, that it's the same thing over, and it's totally wrong. Every project calls for a different UX process. You have to be able to adapt to that. And then, if something doesn't work, then pivot and then go to a different route. So taking initiative on that, of course, I was scared to death when I did it back then, but it was very important for me to grow as a designer and as a UX designer and product designer, for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing advice, and I think such a good attitude to have, and I think sometimes can be overlooked as a really valid approach to take that initiative, go that extra mile, work on weekends, put that extra effort, and that's how you can sometimes change people's minds and prove them wrong, and really show the value of something in the event that there's pushback or hesitation. So I think that's excellent advice. And kind of touching more a little bit on the design agency setting, I know you mentioned timelines are often a huge thing in the agency setting. What are some of the biggest differences between working as a designer in an agency setting versus working in more of a corporate design team?
Oh yeah, there are a lot of differences in there. I can start by saying that, when you work on an agency, designers work on different projects at the same time, simultaneously. They work on different projects and different clients, which is a pretty good thing. When you work on an agency, is client focused, because that's kind of like their big revenue. The more clients we have, the more work we have, and you get to work. Whereas in a corporate team, could be different, of course, of the company location and everything, but in a corporate team, it's more focused on the product or the service that you're providing. That's kind of like one big difference. It's in an agency, you're going to be working with multiple clients and projects and stuff. On a corporate environment, you're going to be working probably for a specific product or service, and you're going to develop that service. Another thing I can think of is the team, like structure. Like an agency teams tend to be like smaller and agile, and designers work with different designers at the same time because they're working with different projects. I'm working on a website, but then one of my friends and my colleagues are working on a logo and branding, and I'm helping them with their part, but then they're helping me with my web project. So you kind of like, the team structure is totally different. In a corporate environment, the team structure is like it's not like you are on an island working by yourself, but it's not so like team oriented per se.
Like there's individual duties that are more outlined and upfront, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. And another thing is like the work pace on an agency is a fast pace. It's like going like pretty fast. We need to get this out, because then that will allow us to bring more clients in or more projects in, whether it's from that same client or a different client. The work pace on a corporate environment, I wouldn't say it's slower. I would say it's like mid, depending on the company. But because you want to create a great product, and creating great products takes time, because you need to allocate time for user research, analyze all that data, dissect all that data, like work with the other teams to make sure we are testing this, to make sure we are on point. Yes, we do have roadmaps and stuff laid out for us, but it's more mid pace, like you can take your time and to make sure like you can have the best user experience for that product or service. And finally, I would say another difference, I would say career development. When you work on a agency, it's, you know, your opportunities for growth, they're kind of limited a little bit as far as like career growth, because if you have a team of 6 people, you probably have an art director maybe or a creative director, and then the 4 of you are senior designers. That's it. You only have like probably like 1 step or 2 to go. But when you work on a corporate design team, they're more structured, and there's more possibilities, more opportunities for you to grow, because there's other teams. You can be a management, a leader, or you can be an individual contributor, a distinguished, creative director. There's so many avenues when you work on, there's nothing wrong with it working on an agency or working on a corporate environment. It's just like every person has to pick like what they want in life. I have the opportunity to work on both of them and enjoy all of them. Right now, I work for more like a corporate team, and I'm enjoying my life right now.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Well, I think those are really good definitions that you gave and kind of what the differences are, because I know that comes up a lot in designers who are either new to the field or just really trying to figure out what works for them long term for their career goals. So I think that's a good distinction you made between agency versus kind of corporate team. And so when you made that jump from graphic designer to UX designer, what are some things that you learned or advice that you would give now to graphic designers who may be thinking about taking that same jump, going from graphic designer to UX? What would be your advice?
I get this question all the time on my IG lives, on my group, and everywhere. You have to understand like the differences between graphic design and UX design. That's the first thing that you need to know, because there are some people that I know that they make the jump and then they hate it because they thought they were going to be creating mock-ups, like mobile mock-ups. Yeah, moving pixels left to right. And then they hate it when they find out like, oh my God, it's meetings also. There's, like user research, and then we need to create wireframe, and we need to do this. And they thought it was just creating visuals. Graphic design, it's about creating visual aesthetics and visual designs, whether it's on different medias, like you're going to be creating email designs, or you're going to be creating a little bit of graphics for websites, or doing some Photoshop editing. That's part of design, creating visual design, aesthetically beautiful. That's graphic design. UX, on the other hand, it's more focused on user-centered products or services, creating user experiences, designing those experiences. And once you know the difference between those two, then you need to ask yourself, like, do you enjoy like solving problems? Is that something that I like to do? Yes. Do you like to work with other designers as well? Provide them feedback, ask for feedback. Do you like to do that? You gotta ask your questions, like if it's worth for me to go and jump into that, because a lot of people, what I'm seeing right now is they're making the jump because they think it's easy, because they think it's easy. Oh, I'll take a boot camp that is 3 months, and after that, I'm gonna be making 100K. No, it's not gonna happen. They're probably naive because they don't know. I definitely tell them, understand what you are going to be doing as a UX designer first. Research, learn a few books, read a few books about what UX is, take a few little things, take notes, make comparison of the things that you like to do. And then if it fits within that field of UX, then make the jump. But then don't make the jump but by just like, okay, I'm going to do it and that's it. No, like commit to it, like actually commit to it. Be the best version of yourself as a UX designer, because there's a lot of competition out there. There's a lot of great, like we are in the design field, and there's a lot of competition, and companies want the best of the best, not just like, oh, I got a title of a UX designer and that's it. but then you don't have a strong portfolio, or you don't have, case studies and stuff like that that show your design thinking, your process. Just think about all of the stuff that you will be doing, and then if it fits within your, your criteria of like, that's what I want to do, then do it. Jump in like 100%.
Those are really good points. I think that's, obviously with the influx of people getting into UX design, more so than ever. I think that's probably something that's not being thought of enough. I think a lot of people do just see, the salary increase or possibilities in the UX field and think, oh, I'm just going to go ahead and do a boot camp, just go for it, and not necessarily asking themselves first, will I actually enjoy it? Just because I enjoy some parts of design, am I actually going to enjoy more of the interaction design aspects of it? So I think that's a really good point, because you want to ultimately be fulfilled and satisfied with the job that you're getting into, especially if you're making an investment into, a boot camp, which some of them are really pricey out there. So I think that's a really good point to really understand first if it's going to be right for you before going. And then if you are going to do it, go for it, because there is a lot of competition. So I think that's great advice. So what
oh yeah,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, what are you? So obviously you're now at a huge company, and you're in a senior role and are a mentor to a lot of designers. So as you see, people that are maybe interviewing to join your team, and you're hiring for designers on your team, what are some things that you look for, like in terms of skills or personality traits?
When it comes to, like if I'm hiring someone, like for my team or whatever it is, what I look for on a designer, it's like, you got to be passionate about, what you're doing, right? Yes, we say this, and it can sound like cliche, like, oh, I'm passionate about design. Yeah, but you have to be actually passionate about,
You can't fake it, is what you're saying then.
Yeah, and you need to be willing to take initiatives, like I did. And I'm gonna make a parenthesis here. I remember once I was on a design team. I was like 4 of designers, and they were asking a question about a specific project, and I had an idea, but I was so afraid to say something. I was nervous, and I was like, I'm not gonna say anything, because we as junior designers, we tend to, rely on the senior designer to say something, and then we probably will intercept. And I made a parenthesis here, because I remember me taking that initiative and just speaking up, and I was so like nervous, like my heart was pounding, because it was a big meeting with a lot of people, important people in that company. And I just like, you know what, I'm gonna go for it, even though like, and then my voice has started cracking, and I'm like, guys, I want to say something, and my creative director like look at me like, what is he gonna say now? And and I said it, and then I think the big guy and a person from marketing, they were like, oh my God, that's a genius idea. That is great. And I was so like, even like when they are saying that, I'm so like confused. I'm so nervous. My heart, it's beating out of my chest. And then my creative director told me like, okay, I want you to be on that team and develop that idea just to see. That's what I'm looking for. Like if I'm hiring someone that takes initiative, even though like you're gonna have the same experience as me, probably, like you're gonna feel like, oh my God, but just speak up, just say something. I look for someone that has good communication skills, because we need to be great communicators. That's another thing. I'm looking for someone that has collaboration skills. It's not about you, it's about the product. And if it's about the product or the service, we are working on this together. It's not just like, I'm gonna shine because I created this idea. No, you have a whole team of PMs, POs, and engineers, and developers, and data analysts, and art directors, and you have to collaborate with all of them. And problem solving skills that like think about how can you solve a problem, and have 2 or 3 different scenarios where you're like, okay, if this doesn't work, then we go for this one. So I look for those type of individuals, and then also that have strong portfolio, with case studies that actually tell me who you are and how do you think, like design thinking and process. Those are kind of like the type of things I look when hiring like new designers.
Very nice. Very cool. Yeah, I think communication, one of the ones that you mentioned, I think is sometimes underrated, or people don't necessarily know how important communication is as a UX designer or product designer, just because you are kind of the liaison and the person spearheading some of those conversations between developers and other product team members. So I think that's a great point. So you've gone through all kind of things that you look for. What are some maybe red flags that you see maybe junior designers making, or kind of traits or kind of red flags that you try and avoid when you're hiring?
Well, the first thing I do is actually, like kind of like one of the first red flags is like if you don't have your portfolio on point, like meaning like design can be subjective sometimes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we've been there. We know what good design looks like, right? So if you, if I have 3 designers with 3 different portfolios, and 2 of them are, they're using design principles, they're using, contrast, and they're using white space, they're using repetition, they're using proximity, they're using all these design principles. I know that design is very detailed, and then if I see someone that it's, they don't care about, they just putting like the stuff out there because they were rushing about putting their portfolio out there, that is kind of like a red flag right there. That's one thing. Another red flag that I look, it's if you're interviewing, of course, the person that it's probably nervous. And we know that. We all been through there. Even if we go to an interview ourselves, we get that little, nervousness like within us, but we can control it now because, you've been through so much, you know how to control it, and then just like speak the truth. That's another thing. I like to go and get to know the person and see if he fits within the culture. If it doesn't fit because it's being narcissist about X, Y, and Z, that's kind of like a red flag to me. And I'm like, okay, this guy or this girl didn't make the cut because X, Y, and Z. Of course, every company has their own process of hiring. It's not just me who's going to make that decision. It's going to be a combination of many different things, as well as design. We do some design tests and stuff like that, just to see like how they, come up with an idea for something. We do some of the critiques, design critiques. Hey, and then in there we kind of know how these people think and behave, and kind of like how do he approach design. And then if it's not aligned with the business, mission, and we kind of look to have a more concise individuals that have those specific skills. And then if some of those people, and I get it, sometimes you get a person that probably doesn't have a lot of like communication skills, but that's something that they will develop with time. But if that person has initiative and willing to learn, those are the kind of people that I like to make a change in their lives, and then give them the chance to go and explore and grow. So yeah, it's really hard to pinpoint like the bad things. I'm focused more on the good things, but I kind of like give you some examples of
those are awesome. That's awesome to hear. I think there's a lot of nuances that go into it, right? And I think to your point, you saying that just seeing someone who maybe is lacking in certain areas but has some good skills in certain areas, that's not necessarily a deal breaker. There's always an opportunity where if you feel like that person's the right fit for other reasons, they can always cultivate those skills and grow into it. So I think potential is a big thing, right? Just seeing that person has potential, has the initiative, that can go a long way. And they don't have to be the world's most perfect candidate in order to get the position and be able to then show it afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. Like when I went from being a designer to a senior designer, for example, um, I was so scared, right? Like I was so scared I was gonna make so many mistakes, but that's fine. We are supposed to make mistakes. The thing is like you grow from those mistakes and then you leave room for new mistakes that will be on the same level as you are right now. And then once you hit those mistakes and you learn from those, then you go up again. It's kind of like a ladder. And then now you're up there. The problems will be a lot bigger because you already went through, the little mistakes and stuff like that. Oh my God, I sent the design to print and it had a it had a typo, right?
Yeah.
But then you learn about proofreading and you proofread your stuff. You already learned that. So then the problems become bigger, but that's supposed to happen. So I didn't keep doing a lot of mistakes, but in a different level. But at the same time, you learn from those and you keep going up, and then new mistakes, and then you keep going on, and you keep going. It's not going to stop. People think like, oh, once you hit like a senior level or a principal or like a manager or leader, that you're not going to make mistakes. No, you are going to make mistakes all the time.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's just a series of mistakes, but it's just more about how you learn from them and then getting not making the kind of the same mistakes over and over again, right? Because like you said, new mistakes will come as you move past some of the more trivial, minor ones. You'll
Yep.
keep progressing. As long as you're not making the same mistake over and over again and you're growing, then I think that's incremental improvement is really all that's key, right, to progressing in your career. So I think that's really interesting. And so you're also an ambassador for Adobe, which is really cool. And you create basically educational content with Adobe for the design community. So can you share a little bit about how that opportunity came about and what it entails?
Yeah, definitely. I started teaching on Instagram
Mhm.
2018, November 2018, because my wife told me like, hey, you have all this knowledge that you should probably start teaching on social media and stuff. And I started teaching, but I didn't know how to do it because I know about Instagram, but I didn't know the things that you could do.
Yeah.
So I started like growing my channel, like creating content that if I was following myself, I would consume. So I was like putting myself into like, if I was a designer and I follow myself, what do I wanted to see? And then I started creating that type of content, and then I started creating like growing like exponentially.
Mhm.
So because I was growing like pretty big, I started like collaborating with other creators, design creators, and also collaborating with companies and stuff like that. And then I think one of my followers actually, which is my friend now, recommended me to Adobe, like, hey, this guy's great, like he's doing
Oh,
amazing
nice.
content. Um, she just like recommended me to Adobe. And then Adobe approached me like, hey, we want to talk to you. We've seen the stuff that you're doing for the design community. We would love to hear from you and see like how can we collaborate and stuff. So um, then we started talking. I had the first interview with them, and they were like amazing. And they provided me with so many different things um, for me to enhance my content and also like reach out to more and more people. So because of that, it's been almost I would say 2 3 years, 2 years and something. I started working with Adobe is pretty big as well. So they have, of course, Adobe is a corporate, company, but then also they have all the design softwares and applications and stuff. So right now, I'm part of three different, as part of Adobe, I'm part of three different programs and like I'm part of the Adobe Live Insiders. I'm part of the Adobe Express Ambassador program, and I'm also a part of the creative ambassadors of Adobe as well. And it's been an amazing experience working with Adobe, working with other talented people there. I always dream about like working at Adobe. And this is something that, when I first opened Photoshop, I'm like, would you imagine? And I remember this because this was back in 2005. I was
Mhm.
like, can you imagine if I worked for this company one day? It was kind of like a thing that you said,
Pipe dream, yeah, that's
yeah,
awesome.
and you just forget about it. And I never in a million years thought that I would work with them the way I'm doing it right now. And it's not like I apply for a job there, you know what I mean? And it was through my social media. That's something that I started that I never thought. But yeah, it's been a great experience. We have so many different things coming up next year, which is awesome. And yeah, I'm super happy that I get to work with Adobe, and also like get to more people actually, because they
Yeah.
have thousands and thousands of people like everywhere.
Absolutely. Well, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
always it's always cool to know how people who are working with someone like Adobe, a dream company, how that came to be, right? What the background is. And so, actually, speaking of Adobe, and kind of a big thing that was in the news recently, right, was that they recently acquired Figma, the design software. So, I'm interested to hear what your take on that acquisition was, and how you think it will affect Adobe XD's future as a product.
Yeah, it's hard to say what's gonna happen. I Even though like I'm an insider of the work and also what's happening, it's very like very private. I would say they don't share a lot because it's a pretty big deal. I don't think it's done yet, but I think it's a good thing. I work with Adobe products since I was, since 2004,
Mhm.
since I started, right? And I use Adobe XD. I was a UX and the ambassador for the past 1 year and a half, 2 years, and um, everyone, people think that Figma will make you a better designer, and that's just like it's nonsense. It's just like, oh, you don't use Figma? Yes, I do. I use Figma. I have to use it because of work. Uh, but it's just a design tool, right? At the end of the day, it's a design tool. It's not, if you put me with a Figma designer and I grab paint, I'll definitely beat that person because I have design principles. I have, all these things that I, kind of like recopulated over the years. I know about design, like the things that need to be, how to sell a product, how to design a product. And people think like, oh, Figma is just like, if you use Figma, you get superpowers. It's not. Um, and there was a big argument, like when that came, to life, that Adobe is acquiring Figma. What's going to happen now? I don't think anything is going to happen for now. Like they said, Figma is going to continue to be, Figma. It's probably will be part of Adobe, and and I think it'll be for the best because these companies, when stuff like this happen, they just trying to make the product even better.
Yeah.
They probably will integrate illustration in it, which is awesome because uh, if you like to create your icons in Illustrator, you will create your icons in Illustrator, and then just like have them in CC libraries, and then just like, grab them from there and just like create your libraries there, and go from Photoshop to edit an image, and then from there, like grab those assets into Figma. I think
Yeah.
it's going to be for the best and not for the worst. People just think, oh, they're going to ruin it now. And what is going to be the future of, Adobe XD? I still use Adobe XD, and it's not like it's going anywhere right now. I don't think so, because Adobe, there's an audience that love Adobe XD, like me. I love Adobe XD. It's so easy. So
I do too, actually. I use it on a daily basis. I use both, so Figma and Adobe XD,
Mhm.
but I still use both on a daily basis. I feel like you loyal fans to Adobe XD aren't just gonna abandon it. It's an amazing tool. It's got loads of
Yeah.
great features.
And Figma has its own, great features as well, like FigJam and some other stuff, and my guess is like people think right away like, oh, it's not gonna be for free now. Like they're gonna charge us, and they're gonna. At the end of the day, it's a business. You know what I mean? It's a business. Adobe XD was free for a couple of years, 2 years, I think, and everyone was so happy with it because Sketch was for just Mac users.
Yeah.
I remember when I, started with Sketch, and then from Sketch I jumped into XD because I can use other Adobe products and then bring some of those assets in there, and it was light and it was beautiful. And then Figma then came along with new technology type of thing and new things, and it was free. Like that's how they captivated their audience and bring all the people that they have today. But then um, I think it is for the best. It's not going to be for the worst. And people just think the worst right away. They're like, oh, I have to pay now $20. And it's not about that. Think about the future of how they're probably going to be combining things and bringing things together to make our lives a lot easier as designers. But yeah, that's my take on Figma.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. I think it seems to me, just from an outsider's perspective, like a positive thing for the design community. Like you said, they'll probably make each of the products better. They'll have integrations at some point, I'm sure. And, healthy competition or collaboration between tools and offerings out there brings the best out in each one, right? They get better and better. So, and I think to your point, Figma won't give you necessarily superpowers. You still have to be a strong designer, and I think it is important to just know that the skills that you're developing as a designer need to be able to be transferable. So if 5 years down the road there's a different type of tool that comes out that becomes big, or that a lot of companies are requesting to use, then you need to be able to be dynamic and be able to start using that as well, and not have all your eggs in one basket. Be able to be diversified in your skill set, right?
Yeah, exactly. And again, Figma, XD, Sketch, they're design tools that allow us to create amazing products and services. And they don't define who you are as a designer. You define yourself. It's just, there's a big, always is I don't know why, but it's always like Figma, users against XD users against, Sketch users. I've used the three of them, and I love the three of them. I love specific part of each one of those applications. But it's up to you how you feel about, your work. How do you want to work? Like, I like this about Figma, then use Figma. There's nothing wrong with it. I still have some friends that they use Sketch, and nobody's gonna take them out of there because they love it. And it's, they're hesitant about like, oh no, even though they have this X, Y, and Z, I don't care. I'm just gonna keep using it, and that's fine. It's not like, it's not gonna make you better if you go and use this tool or that tool. It's about you.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I'm interested, as we go into 2023, what are some UI, let's say one UI trend or design trend that you think is going to be really big in 2023? And what is one that you maybe want to go away in 2023? You want to see the trend die?
I'm a little weird when it comes to trends, because I'm not a big fan of trends. And the reason why is because trends, they come and go, and that's it. Yeah. There was a big like UI trend, like glassmorphism, that came out in 2021. It came in 2021, because I even did like a tutorial on how to make it, because it was just like going crazy. People were just using glassmorphism everywhere. And the reason why I don't like trends, because they come and go, but also they don't resolve a problem. They don't, like, people just use it for the sake of using it because it's trending right now. And maybe they have problems with accessibility, and they don't even think about that. They're just like, oh, I'm creating an application, I'm going to use glassmorphism here. And then they use it, and then for some reason, the product doesn't work well because it's having like accessibility issues, or, there's not enough contrast, or there's something here, there's something there. That's why I don't follow trends. Yes, I see them as a designer. I read, I go and check what's out there. If I have to guess and pick one, or like gradients, for example, they look really nice and beautiful. But if you use it the right way, that you have enough contrast, you're passing the ADA compliance, then use it. That because it's good. Another trend that I've seen that it's becoming popular, it's like the different use of typefaces, and big typefaces, not smaller anymore. H1 tags are like huge now. They kind of like cover the whole thing.
Yeah.
If you know how to use it, properly, using design principles, that it looks beautiful and it works well. So those kind of like trends, UI trends, I kind of like look for those that are more technical and visually appealing. Also, I look out next year for, like a voice-driven interfaces like Alexa, Siri, like stuff like that. AI, it's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. So I would say those are big trends within the UX field that you have to pay attention. Augmented reality is another one that is, becoming like really good. Accessibility, more companies are more aware of the importance of how your product is accessible to other people with impairments and stuff like that. So I love like that type of stuff of trends that are becoming bigger, bigger. And I think 2023 actually like AI is going to take over. Voice-driven interfaces, augmented reality, and responsive design. We have it already, but it's a thing that keeps improving every year, which is awesome. And accessibility, like I said.
Very cool. Yeah. So you're basically a fan of ones that ultimately aren't really trends. They really are, they improve the usability and accessibility of products. They end up, sticking around and not just kind of being big for a year and then going away. And I also think having that approach means that your designs won't necessarily expire so fast, right? You can sometimes tell when if it's a super trendy design, then it will start to look a little bit expired after a certain point. Whereas if you're really focusing on accessibility and innovation that helps improve the actual usability along with the visual, then to your point, it's going to really stick around and be big. So I think that's very cool. And I think it's a nice word of caution, right? To proceed with caution when you are maybe trying to incorporate trends as a designer into your portfolio, is to make sure you really check for accessibility and think it through, and don't just kind of go with it because it's the hot new thing, but actually think it through, and ultimately you'll show you're a better designer.
Yeah, and also also you as a designer, you get to create stuff from, you can probably, like, we all take we take inspiration from anywhere. Like in my case, I take inspiration from a poster, a book cover, a movie, something that I see. We are designers. We see, we hear, we feel, and then based on that, we create our user experience designs and everything. And you might like a design trend that is going crazy, and you can definitely take that trend and modify it to your user needs, and definitely make something really cool out of it. You just modify it, make something different that is better for the product and for the users. Then then use it, then do it. But just don't follow the trend and just start using those UI trends like everywhere, like, because that's the problem. And we see that it looks beautiful. Some of these people, like, they create these beautiful, amazing things, but that doesn't solve a problem. It's just aesthetically beautiful, and that's it. It doesn't pass that point. And you got to think about way more than that, because right now, human interaction, user experience is very, very important. And then people compare like UI UX, what's the most important thing or whatever. UX is the whole process, and then UI is part of it. It's inside, at least to my eyes. That's how I see it. But before, it was all the way around. And also, even before, there was not even UX in the picture. It was just visually, like, does it look good? Do the clients love it? Then go for it. But now it's totally different as we go into the future of AI and augmented reality and all that fun stuff.
I like it. Well, very well said. Well, thank you so much, Ruben, for your time today and for sharing a drink with me. I had so much fun, and I know you shared some awesome advice and some wisdom and insight. So I appreciate your time. Cheers.
Oh, no. Thank you. Thank you so much for the invite again. Rebecca, it was a pleasure. I hope some of these viewers will take something out of it and probably make their lives a little easier. Every journey for everyone is totally different. People tend to compare themselves with other designers, which is normal. I get it. I did it too. But don't compare yourself to other ones. You're gonna be your own, the better version of yourself as a designer. And if you stop comparing yourself, it's gonna open the floor for you to grow and take all in, and don't think about like, oh, why this person is so amazing and I'm not. You will get there eventually. It's just like, it takes time, but definitely, you will be there.
Awesome. Very well said and very inspiring. Thank you, Ruben.
All right.